turn now to the latest information coming out about the NSA surveillance state. On Saturday, the New York Times reported that the agency was using metadata to create profiles on American citizens, their doings, their locations, their friends, and their social connections. And just yesterday, The Guardian reported that the NSA is collecting this metadata on millions of internet users, regardless of whether or not they are a person of interest. And they're doing it for up to a year. This is the latest leak that once again is brought to you by Edward Snowden, and more specifically the files that he handed over to journalist Glenn Greenwald. Meanwhile, the European Parliament Committee on Civil Liberties met yesterday to talk about the state of privacy and surveillance. During the meeting, Government Accountability Project National Security and Human Rights Director and frequent RT America guest Jesslyn Radak read a statement aloud on behalf of Edward Snowden himself. Here's part of it.
These are not decisions that should be made for a people, but only by the people after full, informed, and fearless debate. Yet public debate is not possible without public knowledge. And in my country, the cost for one in my position of returning public knowledge to public hands has been persecution and exile. If we are to enjoy such debates in the future, we cannot rely upon individual sacrifice.
Snowden, in that letter, went on to say that he wants a better way for whistleblowers to raise red flags about government abuse. To talk all things NSA, RT web producer Andrew Blake joins me now.
Hey,
Hi
Meghan.
there, Andrew. So let's start with this statement that we just heard from Snowden. How did the European Parliament Committee on Civil Liberties respond to it?
Well, you know, in the EU, they've already been pretty concerned for a while now. It's been 4 months since the first leak came out, and that was only targeting U.S. citizens and their phone calls to either domestic or other international persons. But over the course of a couple of weeks and then months, we're seeing that the NSA's activities really do focus on everyone. You know, it's meant to gather intelligence for counterterrorism purposes and to protect the homeland. But what we're realizing is that by gathering intelligence about these other people, you know, outside the U.S., we're gathering information about people inside the U.S., and pretty much no one is safe right now. So what we learned, at least as far as privacy is concerned, so, you know, this committee obviously hasn't gone out and done anything too crazy. The statement was only 24 hours old at this point. However, the committee did already assemble a task force earlier this year, and they have until the end of 2013 to report their findings, to say how does the U.S. intelligence community's surveillance practices, these programs, what impact is that having on the EU and its citizens, and what can we do to make sure that we don't have, you know, other countries interfering with the way our people are communicating.
And is there any indication how that inquiry is going?
Well, I mean, if it's any indication of what we've seen in other countries, the most important thing, if you ask me, is that people are getting angry. You know, it might take a little bit for legislation to come out and for there to be actually leaders standing up and saying something, but over those last 4 months, we've seen that a few times. We've seen incidences in Bolivia, in Brazil, a couple Latin American countries where the reaction to the NSA spying scandal has actually prompted really important international figures to step up and voice their opposition to the U.S.'s surveillance programs. I mean, just recently, the president of Brazil canceled a meeting with the president of the United States over the NSA surveillance scandal. Brazil is a very important nation, economically speaking, and a very important partner with the U.S. These revelations are causing such distrust among allies and among otherwise friendly nations. Like, we're definitely seeing that it might take a little bit to get legislation out there, but people are, you know, sure enough, and rightfully so, getting upset about this.
Now let's move on to The Guardian's latest NSA revelation that came out yesterday about metadata. It came from Edward Snowden, as I mentioned. A metadata analysis guide that was released by The Guardian says, quote, the Marina metadata application tracks a user's browser experience, gathers contact information / content, and develops summaries of targets. This tool offers the ability to export the data in a variety of formats, as well as create various charts to assist in the pattern of life development. Of the more distinguished features, Marina has the ability to look back on the last 365 days worth of DNI metadata seen by the Signet collection system, regardless of whether or not it was tasked of collection. So doesn't this show, Andrew,
That the NSA is collecting everything? Yeah, absolutely. Is that what you're
and
going to
that
get
everything they said was a lie? Am I wrong?
Not necessarily. I mean, if you really want to look into this, I would go back and look at what Senator Ron Wyden said during a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing back in, I believe, March of this year, and then last week. Now, Wyden has been a longtime opponent of these surveillance programs, as has, if you want to look up, Representative Justin Amash from Michigan. He's a Republican who almost was successful in defunding the NSA. And these lawmakers, when they have to grill members of the intelligence community, and the most recent example, it was General Keith Alexander, the director of the NSA, Wyden had to actually go and phrase things so particularly to narrow in exactly on what he wants to know. You can't just say, hey, the NSA, are you doing this? Because they will find a way to deny it if it's at all legally possible. So it all comes down to the wording. And while the NSA might not exactly be lying, I think we have a lot that we're going to learn eventually as these leaks continue.
RT Web producer Andrew Blake breaking it all down for us.
Thanks.